We're going to talk about subclause 1.3, which is about notices and other communications. Let's read the clause together and see what's important. So subclause 1.3. It states, wherever these conditions provide for the giving of a notice, including a notice of dissatisfaction, or the issuing, providing, sending, submitting, or transmitting of another type of communication, and then a number of examples, including an acceptance, an acknowledgement, agreement, approval, certificate, claim, consent, decision determination, etc. The notice or other communications shall be in writing. So this is the first important obligation which we need to remember. All communications and notices shall be in writing. And then there are a couple of sub-obligations mentioned under A, B, C, and D. Under A, it states that a paper original signed by the contractor's representative, the engineer, or the authorized representative of the employer, as the case may be. So the notice or other communication basically shall be signed. And then an electronic original generated from any of the systems of electronic transmission stated in the contract data. Of course, if it's not stated, systems acceptable to the engineer shall be used, where the electronic original is transmitted by the electronic address uniquely assigned to each of such authorized representatives, or both, as stated in these conditions. Now, under B, it states that if it's a notice, it shall be identified as a notice. This is very important to remember. It actually means that on the letter it shall really say notice in the subject line, and hopefully there's some reference to the subclause which makes for easy reading and understanding. If it's another form of communication, it shall be identified as such and include reference to the provisions or provision of the contract under which it is issued where appropriate. So B is a very important condition related to notices and other communications. C is when it shall be delivered by hand or sent by mail or courier or transmitted using any of the systems of electronic transmission under the other paragraphs, which is basically the approved system. And it shall be delivered, sent or transmitted to the address for the recipient's communications as stated in the contract data. And then it says, however, if the recipient gives a notice of another address, all notices and other communications shall be delivered accordingly after the sender receives such notice. So that's when an address is changed. Where these conditions state that a notice or notice of dissatisfaction or other communication is to be delivered, given, issued, provided, sent, submitted, or transmitted, it shall have effect when it's received, obviously, or deemed to have been received, at the recipient's current address under subparagraph D above. An electronically transmitted notice or other communication is deemed to have been received on the day after transmission, provided no non-delivery notification was received by the sender. This makes sense, and most communications are nowadays transmitted electronically, of course. All notices and other types of communication, as referred to above, shall not be unreasonably withheld or delayed, which makes sense as well. The last paragraph of 1.3 states that when a notice or notice of dissatisfaction or certificate is issued by a party or the engineer, the paper and or electronic original shall be sent to the intended recipient, and a copy shall be sent to the engineer or the other party as the case may be. All other communications shall be copied to the parties and or the engineer as stated under these conditions or elsewhere in the contract. So this is in short the clause about communications and notices. In the next section we will give you an example of how a notice can be generated and how it will look like. Let's look at an example, and for example subclause 1.9, which is about errors in the employer requirements. This is a very important clause for both parties, but if we read the first paragraph, it says that if the contractor finds an error, fault or defect in the employer requirements as a result of scrutinizing them under 5.1, the design obligations, the contractor shall give a notice to the engineer within the period stated in the contract data. Obviously, if it's not stated, then it's 42 days calculated from the commencement date of the contract. Now, let's say we have a case like this as a contractor and we need to send a notice. Then we can use, for example, ChatGPT. We put in a prompt and let ChatGPT draft the notice, which we then can use. So let's give it a go. I've entered the prompt into ChatGPT, and let's see how well ChatGPT can make a draft notice. Here we go. As you can see, it's pretty quick. A letterhead, to, from. So you can see it's very important. It says actually notice under subclause 1.9, so it's clear what the notice is all about. And then obviously you have to fill in the details and description of the issue, provide a clear and specific description of the error, ambiguity, discrepancy, etc., etc. Then you have to state the impact, state the action that you're going to take as a contractor, and request the engineer for clarification and or instructions. So, and then you have to sign it as per the subclause 1.3. And obviously if there are some attachments, you have to attach it. So as you can see, it's pretty easy using the tools to create this. You can copy this and put it in a Word document and then electronically sign it, make a PDF and transmit it by the approved electronic data transmission system as stated in the contract data. So the key points to remember for subclause 1.3 regarding notices and other communications is that 1, they shall all be in writing, and 2, they shall be properly signed. They can be electronically generated, and when it concerns a notice, the notice shall be identified as a notice on the letterhead. They can be delivered by hand, mail courier or electronically. Obviously do not delay the issue of the notice or other communication, and copy the representatives and the engineer. So thank you for watching our video, and hopefully we see you in the next one.